Can I introduce Professor Krista Lagus from the University of Helsinki, who's going to be talking about bridging the impossible, how to avoid bringing techno-dystopia to the social sciences. So we'll look forward to your talk. Thank you.
So thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me. I was asked to talk about my journey, and this is what I'll do. So first about me a little bit. I'm a professor of digital social science at the Faculty of Social Sciences, but my background is actually in something completely different, which is statistical machine learning and as a methods developer. So I'm not a social scientist by training at all. I have been part of teams that invented a number of algorithms and then developed them, and sometimes I have been the one who generated the idea for the algorithm. And this is the outline of my talk. So I thought that I first describe briefly some of the actual research methods that or the kind of text mining methods and experiments that we did. But then mostly I will talk about the journey, what it has been to bring these approaches, or try to bring these approaches to this field. And first, actually to the host, could we please take me out of co-host? It is a bit disturbing to have this is just a technical comment. I see these people coming in and it is kind of disturbing my talk. Thank you. So I will talk about what I mean by technodystopia. Then I will talk about the counter, which I presented or kind of came in with, which was a vision for a positive social science and how computational thinking and methods could help with it. But then difficulties that ensued from trying to do this, and some of the realizations and projects that did actually follow. So first about some of research findings which are actually in my field, exploratory mining of opinions and experiences, and the project context was citizen mindscapes and medicine radar projects. And here is a depiction of some of the results. The data set that we had in this was social media texts, about 20 million, close to 20 million texts in this case. And they were from a Finnish platform in Finnish, Suomi 24. And our aim was to find social emotional national dynamics. So emotions, waves of emotion, to be able to observe what happens in the mindscape or the emotional landscape or opinion landscape of a nation through its kind of very frequently used social media platform, which had been going on almost 20 years by that time, which was quite a long time compared to, for example, Twitter or Facebook. And one kind of highlight that we did discover from this was that when we were studying the phenomenon of social bomb, one of the sociologists was interested in the usage of social support and the discussions that were taking place in Finland during the recession of 2008. And it turned out that there was a kind of an increase that was visible from the graphs of talks that were going on about this topic. And there was quite, when we examined the contents of the discussions, it seemed that people were expressing negative attitudes, like people were considering the users of social support as bums, as social bums. But of course, this was quite difficult to do because the variation of expressions in Finnish is quite huge. So on the top, bottom left, you see some of the expressions where the BAM and is kind of included in a long word, and it's not always easy to discover those. But anyway, there's an article in the book that you can find if you're interested in this. Then to Medicine Radar. This is the same data set, kind of the entire data set was about 80 million, but then the subset that we looked for was in 19 million comments, 200 million words from 16 years. And this was about the discussions about health. So in a subforum that discussed health. And we were interested in medicines and talk about medicines. And the initial question was actually, what emotions do people express in context of medicines? But for a lack of an emotion theory and vocabularies for it, we then diverted the question into just generally, how do people discuss medicines? And we developed a method that was a combination of, let's say, artificial intelligence and human intervention or interaction with it. It's been described briefly in a paper that you can see down there. If you want to find out the details, there's also code available if you want to try to do it yourself. It employs various language technology things to do with knowledge extraction or language keyword extraction and so on. Statistical methods including word embeddings and information retrieval type relevance measures. And what we did was we identified concepts. So kind of a proto-ontology of concepts and their relations. And these types, categories that we found included symptoms, the one ontological category was symptoms, sensations, and experiences. The other was the main point, the drugs, medicines, and remedies, and we didn't kind of separate these three. And the third was dosages. And the dosages emerged when we were looking at what happens in the context of talk of drugs and medicines. And the first obvious was, of course, the symptoms, sensations, experiences, but then it turned out that people talked quite a lot about what dosage they were actually using. And they were sharing experiences that were quite difficult, quite hard life experiences that contained everything. And sometimes they were talking about their relatives' experiences, and then people were asking for advice, and all kinds of things were happening, including cannabis being mentioned most often, like it was the most commonly mentioned drug or medicine in the data set, which was kind of interesting. So here is then a tool that we derived out of this concept network and the data. This was a collaboration with a company called Futurize, and they actually did all the data analysis experiments. We were in the role of giving guidance and designing the experiments and suggesting what to do exactly for the text analytics, and then what to do for the tool. And here you see there's a search term, Burana, which is a name of particular medicine for pain relief. And then on the screen, there's related symptoms. So these are the topmost symptoms that were mentioned in connection with Burana, including toothache, menstrual ache, backache, and then toothache, nerve ache, and another expression for nerve ache and so on. So it was very, very simple. The results were actually very, very good. And of course, this was quite a big data set. And it seemed that, hey, this is an excellent way to start from people's discussions and come up with what are the concepts that they want to talk about, as opposed to having a predefined expert ontology of concepts. So we thought that this was actually a very revolutionary way of approaching, like when we find that there's that people talk about cannabis as a drug or a medicine, medicinal purposes, then that's what we include in the data. We don't say that, well, it's not defined as a medicine, but or we kind of don't take a stand on this, but it is coming from bottom up. So this was a kind of we felt that we are onto something very revolutionary regarding even the societal discussions. Okay, so then this was in 2016 and 17 and 18 that we were doing these things. And then I became a professor of digital social science on 2017. And I thought, wow, yes, now I've kind of come to show how is this going and how to go forward. And now I can bring it to social sciences, but then some kind of unseen forces seem to be taking place and difficulties emerge. So that's what I'm going to talk about now. So wow, okay, sorry. So what is the technodystopia I referred to? It seemed that at first nobody just was not interested. So it was difficult to get into dialogue with the actual social scientists. And then eventually when I did get into dialogue, I realized that there are so much preconceptions of like obstacles that people were assuming things about me before even, because I came from the computational side, they were not interested in that. And so I was kind of beginning to analyze what is the technodystopia suspicion that there is or what's kind of the looming monster that I need to first recognize as if I was a representative of it, which I was not, certainly. So these are the things that I discovered, that people, that there's the danger of losing touch with our emotions, our body, our unconscious mind, why we're so kind of losing touch with the human nature and of nature. So this was part of the technodystopia that was kind of underlying the assumptions. Then there was also kind of methodological assumptions that whatever I was going to present would be somehow creating obstacles towards seeing, hearing, learning from interacting with each other instead of building bridges. So the technology seemed to be seen as something that divides us instead of bringing us together. And instead, in social sciences, there is a very strong tradition of qualitative work. So this was what was happening. They were interested in qualitative analysis and not at all in anything quantitative. Quantitative was like the swearer, the worst thing that we could bring, and yet we were trying to bring it. Okay, this. So what I was really about was aiming for a good society for all. So this was the reason why I came to social sciences. And the vision, and how I see it is that when we look, and I want to kind of stop at the word good and good society for all. So it it is a unifying vision. It is something that we can all stand on. It will bring us together, and it will help us to kind of start asking, well, what is good? What is good for everybody? And how can we bring about good for everybody? Well, one of the things we need to do is to hear everybody. And this is certainly something that the computational methods can help with, as I just explained in those research kind of examples. And there is no end to how good things can get. So it's not a zero-sum game. There is not a certain amount of goodness that can be distributed, and then we have to distribute it equally, which is kind of the talk concerning money, for example, in social sciences and kind of services. But good, no end. And also it includes the nature, so not just climate, but also the seas and everything in it. Sorry, I'm kind of having some difficulties on the way. Difficulties on the way also in my presentation. So how to even get to a dialogue. And now I'm showing you a paper that I wrote. It was kind of a vision paper for renewing social sciences, and then the Methods Center, which I was kind of entering into. And this was intended for a development meeting that was taking place. And here I actually proposed a good society for all. And I kind of proposed that this is the vision for positive social science, to study the fundamental ingredients of a good society for all. How does it become? How is it possible in practice? And with awareness and intent, how can we intend to move towards it? So this is kind of a very concrete framing of research questions. But what happened? I then continued also to outline the new role for the Methods Center that I was part of, which was bring together actors, facilitate, educate, organize activities, bring together good practices, develop data sets with taggings, and how to credit those who did that, so that academic reuse of data as a practice becomes enlivened. And also to become a place for a toolbox of social scientists, so it would be easier for them to use these tools. And what happened? I was very naive and enthusiastic, offering the best I could after kind of discovering what the problem in the field was, and then I was offering the solution. I sent it to the dean, who was calling the meeting, but he replied me privately very enthusiastically, but did not distribute it to the members of the meeting as I had hoped for, and did not follow up with anything. So I was left hanging. I felt hurt, and I'm sharing this because these are the kind of experiences that you might have when making changes, kind of proposing something new. Also bringing computational sciences to humanities in general. I learned not to offer my input to the faculty to avoid being hurt. So this is the trauma response. And this is what kinds of responses people learn from these interactions. Okay, but anyway, with my close colleagues, we did begin a deep change. We entered into some team coaching. We founded the Center for Social Data Science instead of this Methods Center. We kind of realigned it, repurposed it. We let go of social statistics as a discipline name and became social data science, and invented a master's curriculum for this. So we took on the educative role that I proposed. And then later, the dean did establish an institute called SSH and became its leader. And when I now look at what I proposed and what the institute does, it actually took on some of the roles that I proposed. So they did go forward. And also lost my copy of this vision paper, but fortunately I had sent it to a colleague who, after 5 years, noticed that some of the ideas that I presented there had been the seed for Center for Social Data Science. So actually I did become seen, but 5 years later. This was a very deep learning for me. Whatever AI does is not that deep learning. Some realizations. And I'm not now seeing any clock, so if somebody can give me the time, that would be nice. So I now ask credit for ideas explicitly in this context. This is a different research context that I had been used to. In my earlier context, ideas were viewed as the most valuable currency and people credited automatically each other. And then I had the realization that the community that I had entered did not really understand how to collaborate in a good way. There were many other examples as well. And I learned to call it anti-social social sciences, and people whom I presented this term, they really thought it accurate, so it was not just me. So I created a course, Co-Creative Methods of Collaboration in Societal Challenges, to counter this problem that I had seen. Thanks for the time. So some other things that happened while on the way. So with colleagues in the humanities and the computational humanities, we had been developing an idea about an infrastructure project, and we applied it once, didn't go through, a second, and then regrouped and kind of also thought about the larger vision there. And I do remember giving a speech about the vision, kind of blowing the spirit into it as well. And we regrouped and then reapplied, and then we actually got the infrastructure going. And that particular project began doing the social sciences and humanities toolbox, which was one of the things that in Citizen Mindscape's time I thought that we would need, the field would need, and now we are actually doing it, but in a much bigger context, and also including the humanities. So it's a much bigger venture now than I had envisioned, but I was happy to join with others like-minded in doing also their visions. My part in that project deals with questionnaire data. I'm a co-PI in a sub-project where we try to see what can be done with the open text answers from surveys and questionnaires, because often they are only analyzed qualitatively, and they could of course be analyzed using text mining, and they could be an easy to use tool for that, and so on. Also in Finnish language. And this was kind of exemplified co-creation, which is the way to really do great big things. And one of the observations that I'm making here is that for big steps, they take time, and sometimes they don't go the way that you thought they would go, but they might go another way. So please keep on trying. Don't give up. One of the observations is that I still haven't found where I could properly introduce and plant the idea of positive social sciences and how I view it. It has been too big an idea. I don't know where to write about it, but here I am at least talking about it. So hopefully something will take a step forward. And here is kind of an image of what I see in positive social science, the context of inquiry or research and innovation. It's an innovation of good societies for all, a good society for all, and good life for all. It's really an innovation project. It includes individual well-being, organizational well-being, so both on the level of the individual and on the level of the group, measurement, interventions, and so on. And there are some meta theories or frameworks that are very relevant, including the computational methods, frameworks, and then we can recognize certain disciplines that are certainly kind of relevant. But what is the most important thing is the aim. It's the good society for all. And this seems to be a steady and fertile ground for collaboration. So how do we get there? Is then the question. So if I'm presenting a vision, then what are the things to do? And I have here listed some things. This is an incomplete list, but as you see, the green is something to do, yellow is something to avoid, yellow light, and then the most orange or red is not kind of the problematic. It would be the shadow that we need to transform. For example, on the do list, I have circled foster for all type of thinking methods and collaborations, then to avoid binary thinking and to transform unconscious hurts, which is what I did on my own path. So perhaps some of these could be more useful generally. And if one thinks about why should we discover and transform unconscious hurts in ourselves, so basically the hurt begets hurt, it creates more hurt. So if it's an unconscious thing, if we are hurt and it's an unconscious thing in ourselves, it will create a trauma response in us and we will unknowingly distribute it forward. So when we get into power positions, we will reenact the trauma response to others, and even without intending, it will go forward. So this might be the situation with the dean that I mentioned, that there is something like a trauma that is so spread in the community that people don't recognize it. But just newcomers get hurt, and then they learn, and they also become carriers of the trauma and distributing it forward. So we need to uncover and transform it to actually become conscious and take things forward. So why avoid binary thinking? It is, it's really about divisive thinking. So if we think of in terms of ones and zeros, it leads to us thinking that there is nothing beyond these ones and zeros. So it cancels. In effect, it cancels some part of reality, divides communities into us and them, and does not perceive a third way out of problems and dilemmas. So it's kind of a dangerous way to think. And instead, we should consider noise as part of life, errors as part of life, even contradictions part of life. And we can't just say no to these things. We have to embrace them, accept and appreciate these. They are part of the human condition, part of nature, part of communication. So they should be part of our models. Always we should model noise as well. Somehow it also provides room for growth, change and expansion and the new. And so I am employing this. So all the projects that I do have this property of non-binary thinking. So then on the do list, foster for all type of thinking in action. And here I'm presenting the newest project of ours, Collaborating for Equality, it's called. And the really important line is faculty is fair and safe together. And this stems from student communities reports of hurt in our faculty that were so bad that they reached the national media. So twice this happened. And then the faculty decided to act. And of course, there was a longer history. So on the surface, it's a crowdsourcing and data collection project, and underlying it deep down, it's actually an organizational intervention. So if you look at the pencils, they employ all kind of represent all colors, and there's a sense of equality in them. We use concepts like fair, safe, together, equality. So these are things that we activate in people. We took these posters to bathrooms. So when people are sitting on the toilet, they are staring at the poster at the eye level, and they think of these concepts, or they are exposed to them. And this is intended as a transformative intervention, but it is dressed as data collection, and it's targeted to an analytic thinking, critical, and at times hurtful community to make things better. Yeah, and again, this is what I want to do. I thank you.